Go. Hello, ladies. How is everybody today?
Hello. Good.
Hello. Today our theme is dark to light. And before we started recording, we were talking about the California power outage. Christina and I both live in California. Luckily, my power didn't go out, but I'm really curious to see what happens with the whole dark to light thing in your own home, in your own life, Christina. And then we'll go into some more expanded explanations of what we think that really means when things are brought to the light. So yeah, Christina, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you went through?
Sure. Yeah, well, for several weeks, that's just been kind of on my mind post our Tahoe trip, which we'll get into maybe a little bit today. But just looking at the juxtaposition of darkness and light, and you can't have one without the other, and all of and just the whole thing. I've been more aware of it, and then so what happens in my life is here we were told that I guess there's light and goodness in the fact that we were told and forewarned, but basically had no power for 3 days. So and I feel that there's some agenda behind the whole thing, and we can go into that a little bit too, but I was just really watching the energy of myself, and of course in the darkness there's stillness, and so there were beautiful moments of being with candles and fairy lights and backup lights and just the quiet, the no Wi-Fi. We just took everything out of the refrigerator. It's like it was like camping literally for 3 days, and you have to make do and do without certain things, and luckily my work did not lose power so I could charge my phone and things like that. But so there was a stillness and a quiet, yet because it was this forced kind of agenda where there was a lot of fear in people, I was watching myself and energy of others, like the darkness and light within people. So for example, you're told you better get gas, you better get ice, so it creates this fear mentality where you have people cutting each other off trying to get gas, which is up at gouge prices close to $5 a gallon, and you have all of that going on, and people, like one man kind of crammed himself in front of people waiting in line and grabbed 6 or 7 bags of ice when there was maybe 2 or 3 left in a line of 10 people. And so you see this darkness, if you're going to label it, coming out in people, but yet when you go to the root of it, everybody's just wanting to take care of their own, and it's coming from a place of wanting to be okay. And then there was beautiful moments of like my neighbor coming over and saying, hey, we just got a generator, you and your son can come over anytime, my gate's going to be unlocked, just come over and you can plug in your devices, or so this kindness coming out from unexpected places. And then waking up in the morning and just having it dark, and then all of a sudden the sunrise, and it's like I was just so grateful for the sun and the warmth and light that was coming up day in and day out with this beautiful sun that we take for granted, that, like you said, Melanie, you take for granted electricity and all of that. But it was so beautiful to just have I can turn these things off. There's the sun, and it's always shining, when as predicted. And so it was very interesting to just watch within myself and within others. And then I'll stop for a while, but then another thing happened around the time when the lights came back on, which was unexpected. But so it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn from everybody around me, because who knows, it might just be rolling all over California, if they can turn the wind on, and we don't really know what's happening with the energy weapons and all that. Like, I think those of us in this state just sort of need to be prepared. But I love that you got the peace that comes with kind of turning everything off and literally having the Wi-Fi off and everything. There's like a calming peace that just envelops everything. And it's so nice and beautiful. And then to connect with your neighbors, it's like that's the vision I've had for such a long time. When the dark does come to light, if that happens fast or if it's happening over years, which is kind of what it's looking like. I hope we do have like a big compression breakthrough moment. But either way, we have to connect with each other again. To me, that's like the healthy future I know we're going to create. But I still don't really know my neighbors, you know, I still don't know how to support them, and they don't know what I'm going through. And that's most unfortunate. We live right next to each other, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So Randi and Krystal, what are your thoughts on dark to light? Either one of you.
Go ahead, Krystal.
Aw. I was going to say, go ahead, Randi. I think that, you know, I've been doing a lot of work, and fortunately this morning, some more work on the realization of oneness with Joel Goldsmith, his books. And in there, he's talking a lot about the good and the bad, the evil and the goodness that there is, and that we can recognize that it's very, and I was thinking about this before we got on the call, it's like, I almost feel like I'm not able to articulate exactly the messages that are coming through his material, but I try my best. And then when I talk about it, I'm like, it's deeper than that. That's how I feel, I feel it's deeper than that. But essentially, when, you know, something bad happens, or let's just say, oh, Satan walks in the room, you know, it's acknowledging that Satan is there, but ultimately not, because really deep underneath all of the layers, everyone is ultimately just pure consciousness, you know. Mm-hmm. And so on one level, yes, we can talk about darkness and we can talk about light, and I think that's definitely true in our material world, in our, you know, 3D world, that's happening. But ultimately within individuals, like the man that's grabbing, you know, 7 bags of ice and all those things, you just said it perfectly, Christina, that he's just doing his best from his pure conscious state to take care of, you know, to take care of whatever it may be. So I feel that it's necessary to have both. And one of my most favorite things, Christina, also from your experience, is you describing the sun coming up. I'm up usually every day as the sun is rising, and it's not that I'm taking it for granted, but you were the perfect reminder of how magnificent that is and the feeling of that. And it's, if a person can actually get themselves, you know, up and just go outdoors to experience that, or sit by a window and experience that, even if you go back to bed or whatever, it really is super powerful to have that, mm-hmm. that light. And it comes at a time when there's such peace and such calm. Even in the middle of the night, you know, you can hear maybe dogs barking or traffic going or whatever, but there is something right there, right at that sunrise, that there is just nothing but just pure calm.
It's pretty magical.
It is. It's really magical. I love that.
Mm-hmm. As you have the sunrise behind you. And looks like Melanie has the sunset.
Kind of. That's cool. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So I was thinking too, kind of going along with what you guys said about the darkness and how much I appreciate when it gets nighttime. Especially here in Arizona, the sun can be so intense during the day, mm-hmm. and then it sets. And it's that same type of thing, but in the evening, just at that time where it's kind of balanced, where there's just that right amount of light and dark. Oh, it feels so wonderful outside, and there's no brightness in your eyes. It's not overpowering, but it still lights up the sky, you know? And so that's, I'm not up at the crack of dawn, so I'm not going to see that very often, but I take time to appreciate the sunset, because I just love that space where it's just, after a hot day, it's like, we're here in Arizona, so it's like suddenly cools like 20 degrees or something, like almost instantly, when it just sets a little bit, and it just feels so good and so pretty to look at and everything else. So so I kind of relate that to, like, of course, within, you know, and I think that it is, again, the beauty and the magic of that dark and light within that creates the beautiful story, that makes the picture we can see. You know, too much light would blind you, as does too much darkness. And so in those, there's not room for experience. But when you have that perfect balance of light and dark, then your experiences are in that, I think, in that perfect balance as well, in a state that brings you joy. Doesn't mean you say, oh, the dark's coming, it's bad. It's all part of cycles. And as we see, as we go into those times of darkness, like Christina said, that's our kind of time to really contemplate, you know, and look within, because we can't see without. So all we can do is start to take that time to look within, you know, knowing that time will pass, and then we get to the part where we're light, and it's like time to share all that we discovered while looking in. And I'd say looking in without judgment, looking in to say, okay, you know, it's like if these lights behind me, if I covered them, the light's not really gone, it just disappears temporarily because we can't see it. And I think a lot of us end up blocking our light with all of the chaos around us, or all of the emotions we trap, or all of the, you know, fears we have. We end up blocking our light, so we continue to walk in the dark only because we haven't used our own light as our guide. And in that space is where there really is truly no darkness. You know, it's just everything is lit if it's lit from within. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways.
What do you think? A lot of us really like to expose and get the light out. What is it that about us that you think that we're so unique in that sense, that we really like to get the truth out, and we really like to bring the darkness to light? What is it with that desire within us? Not everybody has it, because I've had it my whole life, where it's like if a bully's picking on a vulnerable kid, then I'm going to try to stop it, or tell on someone more powerful than me, or do something. A lot of people in our society don't really like to do that, but I love that you gals do. What is it within us? Like, what is that desire to transmute this darkness to light? What do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of that is, again, seeking that balance, because there has been an imbalance of light and darkness here, which is what causes things to get out of control and chaos and downward spirals. But when there's that healthy balance, then everything becomes a beautiful lesson, as opposed to, I think, one that's so painful and difficult. We don't need that level of pain to grow, but we've created it because of, you know, certain groups or whatever, kind of trying to stop the light from coming in, but it always comes in anyways because it already is within. So it's just, again, it's still about uncovering our own light. And I think we have that desire. Most people that are into like a truth movement also have a desire to see the truth within. And when we're not afraid of that truth within, and we can heal it here, it naturally heals in the world outside. So it's like, but seeing that world outside is that reflection back to us, where our imbalances may be. And as we come to balance and love our dark side and our light side, they'll find that balance. The world outside of us will find that balance, to where it's a beautiful balance that's safe and protected, but yet still able to have growth. It's not about all the light or all the dark, right? It's the balance. Again, it's always comes back to the harmony and balance of it.
We're always seeking.
Yes, I actually read a card. So I pulled cards today, not even knowing what our topic was.
Awesome.
The cards I happened to pull, and I was kind of asking for cards like a general state of being for the planetary situation and where things are going, and that one. And the first one that came up was release the dark wound.
Oh, I love that.
Let's love live. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because I pulled the cards this morning, but I didn't actually get a chance to read them, because Trey wanted me to go do something, so I just put them in the thing. I'm like, oh, I'll read it later. And then like 15 minutes before our call, I was like looking through, I'm like, oh my gosh, these are about light and dark, you know, and the whole thing. So that just had a couple things, if you guys don't mind, I wanted to read from that card that I thought was kind of interesting for us. So it says, there is a dark wound in the consciousness of humanity which demands perfection and denies process. If you are thinking of publishing before you have even written the book, if you are comparing your unfinished song idea to the latest best-selling pop release, if you've decided you're not good enough or worthy enough to succeed before you've given it everything you've got and asked for divine help, then the dark wound has you in its grasp. And I think that's really like our dark wound. It's not necessarily all these big things. It's about us not being our true self. We're covering our own light again, if that makes sense. And so these are what we cover our lights with, are these dark wounds that then are reflected out to us unconsciously. So as we're healing here, ourselves at a planetary level, the outside again is just reflecting to us that wound within us, which is our own emotions, our own belief systems, or all these things that we end up trapping ourselves, when really we could just take off the cover, the sheet or whatever, and we create on that. I think that's the kind of lifting of the veil that we talk about, is kind of that lifting of the darkness that's kept us so we can't see exactly what's going on with the fires, with everything else. So so again, as we things release in, we'll see that continue to be reflected in our outside world. Let's see, let me see, there's one more part. It says, you are being asked to honor the path of your own love. What inspires you? What feels exciting, joyful, and perhaps and even rather different? Let that live. Release the dark wound of false belief. And so I think even all of the stuff happening outside, a lot of it is just a false construct, a false reality that we're really just choosing to continue to believe in, where the more we call it out, we bring it to light, it's here now, it's going to just take care of itself. Because it's like, once it's exposed to that dawn, you can start to see everything clearly. And I think we've already reached that dawn, the end of the darkness. We're at that dawn where suddenly everything's becoming clear, and we see the purpose behind it. We see what it is. We see it's not something as scary as we thought it was when we saw it in the dark. You know, because in the dark, it's like when you're kids, you know, your hat's on the shelf and you think that there's a man over there watching, and you freak out and you scare yourself. Shoot, even adults do it a lot of times, right? So when you turn on the light, it's like, oh yeah, that's my hat I left on the dresser or whatever.
I totally
so I think it's that type of thing. It's the illusion we're seeing because of the fear in our darkness, our own stuff that we're covering. Okay, so that was the first card, and that was kind of my interpretation of it. And then the second one was defend. Let's see. Defend to the end the worthwhile. And this card even said, if you happen to pull this card with the first one, then its impacts mean it's even more important and more intense right now, which of course we pulled together.
Before you read that, Randy, I pulled a card the night, the same deck, which is amazing, the night that we were going into this windstorm, which was a little scary because my trees were whipping against my tile roof, and I thought they were going to come out, and I thought my umbrella would, and that's the exact card that I pulled.
Oh, really? Wow.
So, yeah, just 2 nights ago. Yeah.
And I love you. Yeah, those two cards go together. So, okay.
I know, amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just read a little bit from this one because it's the part that kind of talks about what we're talking about. All right. Beneath the illusions, pretty as they seem, you know what is real. Beneath the lies, sweet though they may sound, you know what is worthwhile. All that is genuinely, truly essential for the heart to throb with life is worthwhile. Anything that dulls or suffocates its vibrant aliveness must be questioned, challenged, and more likely cast aside, for the heart is the key to living an authentic life. Well, let's see. You are a sacred warrior, a defender of the heart. You have cried genuine tears of your own grief and the grief of the world. If you have raged at the injustice and oppression in your own life and in the world, you have raged. You have felt the need to protect the presence of love. Whilst it is essentially powerful, it can be too easily smothered under the lies and fear. The sacred warrior must heed the dangerous voices that say, oh, stop being so sensitive, stop making such a big deal of things. Love is the biggest deal out there. What else is worth being sensitive about? The sacred warrior is vigilant that the presence of love is not chipped away by fear, criticism, doubt, and untruths. Even if others find unflinching honesty of your feelings difficult to handle, even if those feelings expressed with gentleness and compassion, the sacred warrior honors the task of being more faithful to love than anything else. This includes the fear of loss. Actually, it includes the fear of anything at all. So I think that's kind of what you were asking about, Melanie, you know, as far as like why we naturally want to get the truth out and things like that. And I think that really was a part of that, you know, it's, what am I going to say? Because we don't want our own light suffocated and dulled. And we don't want the light of others, dulled, and we see the things that are doing it. So we call out the injustice. And that is a job of this sacred warrior that she's talking about, and I think we came here knowing that that was part of our responsibility. It's not everyone's responsibility, but enough of us did it that, again, just brought enough light to it that it now can be taken care of and unveiled. And so I think we are part of the unveiling of that information. And okay, I want to read one more thing. So this is about the dark to light part. Okay. Being vigilant with what is meaningful and truthful, even the smallest and seemingly most insignificant ways, strengthens the sacred warrior and prevents darkness from gaining a stronghold from the inside. The darkness will be intelligent and sneaky. It will tell you that it doesn't matter, that this one time you can forget what you promised, that you are just one person and that you can't make a difference. That darkness will lure you into sleepy ambivalence and dull your light if you allow it to. The sacred warrior within will fight with love and honor to be true to what has meaning and never, ever allow it to be cast aside, even if it seems easier in the moment. The sacred warrior finds joy and humor in life to prevent the seriousness of the task from stiffing the heart that just wants to live and be free. That joy brings strength to the warrior and expanded, relaxed awareness that can sense the presence of fear, whether it's masked by anger or doubt, immediately respond to it with fierce compassion. The sacred warrior will not allow fear to gain stronghold within the heart. And I think that's the thing is that to me is what I felt my mission is here to do. And I think that's what we've been doing. And I think we have reached that sacred space of where there's balance returning, and that will be the healing beginning.
Yeah, and as sick as a lot of the darkness is, I'm really grateful for it because of how it's allowing us to see and experience and be our strength. Similar to the seed under the ground, and you were talking about how important that was in Tahoe, I think it was, that the roots germinate and that that the tree can't live without the roots, can't live without the dark, and so
it had to go into the darkness before it could survive the light.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that I would have the gratitude and strength I have now without that. So some of it's totally dark, though.
And also about how you asked the question about truth coming out and why some of us, want that and some don't. I think everyone does. That's just innately within everyone that they do want the truth. But they get in the spirals, like, okay, I know that wasn't the truth. So then, let's use this to cover that up and this to cover that up. It's not sustainable. And so, over time, I think all of it, comes to light, and you just have to have that contrast in the meantime. And it goes the same, on the scale of us living in the material world. I always try to relate these like big worldly, ideas and conversations back to, but so what, like I'm still having a carpool every day or work every day, and grocery shop and things like that. And so I think anything in our life is that way. It's not sustainable for a really long period of time in a certain way, whether it is all joyful and rainbows and unicorns. There is an appreciation for that darkness and the quiet time, and even if it's just sobbing or throwing up or whatever it might be, it's so necessary for that, and it's almost like a cleansing, whether it's really dark and then it becomes really bright. It is like a cleansing process. And so just like we feed our bodies, it's like, I can't sustain eating all of this bad thing stuff for me over and over and over. So it has to come to light. It has to come to truth. Like, all right, I should, shut the door on the pantry and, not go visit it after 9 o'clock or whatever it might be. So I think that that's really important too. And ultimately, Melanie, I think everything does come out. Everything does come out.
I love that you connected, because I love the analogy of covering a light. It's not gone, it's still there. And I agree with, I love how you're tying it into real life. I had a real life thing happened yesterday, and I have my cat, who's really my favorite animal I've ever had. He's super connected. He's 13. He's kind of almost one of my best friends. I love this little animal, and he's very connected. He knew that the storm was stressful, so he came up and slept on my head the other night. He's very connected, and he's had a little area on his leg that I know is not good, and I've been watching it and doing holistic things with it and just trying to tune in what to do, because he was really traumatized when I took him to the vet up the street several months ago. So I haven't taken him, but then my son realized that he had some nodules in his groin, and I went, okay, this isn't good. And so I chose to drive him an hour and a half to a holistic vet in Santa Rosa, because we don't have any here. Or I was on a waiting list for a house call vet. It was going to be another month and a half. So she said, I would probably recommend you take him in if you can. So the two of us venture off to this vet on a windy mountain road. It was a horrific drive, because the whole way there, the cat's wrapped in a blanket, like the whole way. And so I was anxious, because I knew that the information was not going to be good. And I know that's the truth that's in there. And I know that, but I didn't have outward confirmation. But the beautiful thing that happened was, so we arrive, and we had an hour with the staff and the holistic vet, integrative vet, who was wonderful, very kind, compassionate. They have a no fear room where the cat was comfortable. They put catnip and valerian on his head, and he immediately just kind of sat and chilled and got whiffs of it and was calm. And as she proceeded to pretty much diagnose that he has terminal carcinoma, maybe several months to longer, as sad as that is, the truth was coming out. And while she was saying this, he like walked to the other side of the room and kind of he basically was like sitting away, not looking at me, like looking away, but like just calm and just sitting there. And then when she finished, he kind of came back, and he just was looking at us. And I got a lot of different holistic things I can do to support him through this process. And the whole way home, I was holding him, and Sean drove. He was completely calm. And so it was this festering lie of untruth that I was choosing to not see, even though I intuitively knew. It came out, and it was like, whoosh, there it was. And so, I have a cat that's dying. It's not happy news, but I feel so much love and peace. And I feel like, and I got to talk all the way home with Sean, saying, this cat is so in tune. He is so happy that we know this. It's not like I'm signing a death warrant. And she pretty much said, if you're going the Western route, you'd have to amputate his whole hind leg and lymph nodes, and it wouldn't even probably do anything. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing chemotherapy. It's ridiculous. And so so it turned to, all I have left to do for this cat is just love him. Just love him. I got him some CBD treats. I got him I ordered the valerian and catnip combination. I'm going to make the golden paste with honey and turmeric to put on his leg, that if he licks, it's actually good for his intestinal tract and healing process. And it was just, it's been just as sad as it is. And I've had my moments of, my grief and crying, but I feel such a peace that this truth has come to light. And then all that's left is love, and that I can just love him. I don't have to worry. And so it just was a beautiful, and so that's really what bringing these truths and spiritual concepts and lessons to life. It's like, that's, bringing it back to nature and the animals and trees and watching anything going through a difficult process. There is light and truth and beautiful qualities in there if you can be still and find it and see it. It's just not, so then come back to, it's really all the same. You can't have one without the other. And it's just a tweak of your perception, and it's different. It's like my whole drive there, I was emotional, trying to rush to get there on time, and he's screaming, so I'm upset. And then it just turned into whoosh, and then peace. And so it was really beautiful, and we'll have our moments, but I just feel like I'm just loving him more. I'm loving him even more.
You're kind of cutting in and
every
out,
moment.
Christina. Your thing is cutting in and out.
Oh, okay.
We're not
I'm
hearing.
sure.
We got the idea.
Okay.
We got it. Just to let you know.
You got the idea. Okay.
No, it feels,
Yeah.
it feels good to face anything like that. Even my son with a massive amount of homework, and he's actually graduated now, not doing school anymore, but it was the same thing. He had stress and anxiety and so much heaviness and weight, and he knew he had a lot of homework. And I was like, let's just get everything out. Like, let's just put it all on paper. And then they start to do that, and then they break it down, and then they realize this big monster that they were fearing so much, that was, dragging him down, making him incapable of lifting a finger, is actually doable. And same with our own darkness, and facing the fact that you'll lose your cat. Now you get to celebrate, its life. And there's just so much beauty in just lifting the cover and really seeing what you're dealing with and addressing it. And to me, that's being a grown-up, and that's the beginnings of wisdom, is when we can do that. I love that.
There was a Russell Brand I was listening to just a couple days ago or something, and he was talking about the butterfly and the chrysalis, and how we think that he just kind of goes in there and transforms. What he said was the caterpillar actually basically turns to mush, almost completely dies, and then reconstitute itself as the butterfly. So it's interesting, as we're looking in the darkness and shifting all this, I think we're literally going through that transformation of death to life, spiritual death, metamorphosis, into our own, our new light, our new expression. So I don't know, I thought that was a cool point where, the darkness can be, the death, the end, but it's really just an end of one experience to arise to a new, like we do each morning when we wake up. And don't we appreciate that darkness at night to just kind of let our mind stop and sleep? And I mean, for me, it's like my bed at night sometimes is so magical. It's just like, I get to sleep, my eyes get to close, and I love that time. And then we love our day. So again, it's that good balance.
Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be like, dang it, I got to do this life thing. Like I was in some other dimension, and I liked it.
Another 2 hours.
I know. No, I love that. I love facing it. Sometimes it is painful though. Like one thing I've discovered is maybe the people I've hurt, going deep within. And sometimes I'll just get this download of information of how I've really hurt somebody, or like the gossip, or it's something that I didn't think was a big deal that I thought I processed. Like I tap into maybe how it affected another person. Wow. And it's kind of horrifying, but I'm really grateful for it, because I don't want to show up in the world and be somebody that causes harm and pain. So you got to kind of be brave to look at your dark side, because it can bring up some uncomfortable things for sure. But it's better than keeping it in and maybe having it manifest as disease or a bad mood or
I think that's where that one card was talking about becoming, when the darkness becomes too powerful, and that's where you keep that balance. So I think you're right.
Yeah, it seeks acknowledgement and love and attention. It really does. So I have to actually cut out a little bit early today. We have about 10 more minutes because my daughter does a minimum day on these days. So.
Well, I think it's interesting too. It talked about love, and I do think love is the same in the light or the dark. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes you feel safe no matter what's happening around when you're in that space of love. It's like if a little kid has a bad dream, they wake up in the night, they're scared. If you come in there and just give them love, you don't even have to turn on the lights. Maybe you do to show them it's all okay, everything's fine, but it's really that love that's that calming factor, no matter how dark it is. And so I think that's how, when we're going through our own process, looking at our own darkness, if we keep in that space of I love myself, I love everything I experience, it's all part of making me who I am, then it becomes a safe way and a comfortable way to address our own darkness, instead of like we get down there and are shocked, like, oh my gosh, you know, or how did I store this long, or whatever it is. In a space of love, it's just like where you like the content cat. Everything's okay, even though the situation is still exactly the same. That love and that all of that is what I think calms the energy of chaos in the light or the dark.
Have you
and it's like Krystal talked about, that's that space in the morning too. It's that same space of peace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What Krystal?
I think Melanie was asking
Oh,
something.
Melanie.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, have you guys found that sometimes exposing the darkness or exposing darkness either collectively or within others, it definitely triggers people? How do you deal with that? I mean, because it's from a place of love, and I certainly don't like seeing suffering, so sometimes I'll call out the darkness, but there's sure an awful lot of people that are not ready or wanting to deal with their dark side, I guess, even though it's causing them suffering and others suffering. How do you deal with that? Because people can really lash out.
You know, you're not going to have a choice eventually, so I don't concern myself with it, and I just, if they're lashing out, then I let that be about them and don't spend any time lashing out back. I used to, but I've just gotten to the point where I just realize it's all going to be fine, and I think we can now hold that space of as the light and the dark come together in that sacred loving space. I think our job is to really go into the heart and hold that loving space now as this transition happens, because I think that's really going to what makes it, that's really what's going to make it be a peaceful transition, as opposed to a battle between the light and the dark until there's basically nothing left of either, you know. And we could go that path too, but that path that's not necessarily the timeline we want to experience. I'd rather experience the timeline that transfers through love. So I think in all of our interactions, if they truly come from a space of love, and I think there's the true space of love, and then the space we think is love, but it really is like has its own agenda behind it, you might say. You know, because I know that I've been there for sure, where it's like, I'm telling you the truth because I love you, you biatch, you know. It's not really the yeah, being honest, right? But when it's from that true space of love, I think you'll know what the right time to talk is, and when the right time to be silent is, and when it's just the knowing of, you know what, they're going to find out when they find out. It may not be to say that they're ready, and that's okay. And just let them be in that space, because that's where they're ready to be. They're not ready for the more truth to be unveiled yet, and that's okay. It's going to happen. Maybe a little more harsh for them later, who knows, but it doesn't really matter. The fact is it'll be taken care of. We don't have to worry.
Well, and I think it goes to coming from not an egoic space. I think that's kind of the where you were trying to pinpoint, exactly. But that it is from a true space of love. And I mean, this is another real material world example, but my sweet mom, she is just this loving, her love language is just to give and to help and such. And this woman has these concert tickets that she can't go to this concert. And so my mom said, well, okay, I'll buy them. My mom doesn't want to go. She gives this woman the money, and then, you know, she tells me about it, and I find out the seats are located like 2 rows from the top of the venue. And I'm like, Mom, I don't think you're going to want to sit up there. And so it was like, Mom, if you can just be honest, you know, and come, and it's from a space of love. And she gave the tickets back and told the woman, no, you just keep my money. I just, you know, well, it turned out someone else, they found someone else to buy the tickets, and they did give my mother the money back. But it's again, if you're coming from that place of love and you want to tell someone something, Melanie, and it's like, you know, it's going to expose them, you know, it's going to hurt them, you know, it's going to be this or that or this. It's from a place of love. And yeah, it may hurt, a sting initially, but our vibrations are so much higher, and the intention behind it is so, again, just love, just pure love, the intention behind it. And when that's driving it and the vibration can stay higher, that holds us in our own integrity. And if we hold ourselves in our own integrity, then the rest of the planet, you know, will come and follow and stay lifted into those vibrations as well. I think that's really important.
That is true. Well, in fact, even you guys know I'm kind of triggering sometimes, and I'll say things kind of bluntly. but you know that when it comes from that space of love for you, and I do the same thing to myself, you know, as far as like calling out my own stuff just as it is, but I know I love myself, and I'm only doing it as to increase my own awareness and my own being, and then sharing that gift I have of triggering things. But when it comes from a space of love, it's received. And when it doesn't, that's when I find that it's rejected back or whatever. And sometimes it is anyways, because it is triggering. But eventually I think they'll take that within, and it'll serve them because of the space it began from. Where if I would have began from a space of just trying to be in their face, which I've done before, I don't think that ever is brought in and really felt and understood and shifted. It's always the opposite. It's always like the magnets pushing away at each other, right? So
Yeah,
I think that's the difference with that love.
yeah, and I fully believe like multiple truths or infinite truths exist, right? And that's why when somebody's really drunk and they seem to be channeling a demon or something, that they can speak truth, but it's certainly not from a place of love, and it can really sting and dig and dive a knife into your well-being. And it's so important. You're absolutely right, Krystal and Randi, like to stay in a place of love so you can deliver truth. Hopefully that is a truth that will help to bring them joy and not suffering. But there's certainly other kinds of darkness that can be brought to light that is probably not very helpful. So to stay in that place of love is important.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys.
I got to make sure somebody picked up my daughter from school. So I'm going to say
that too. Okay. Well, I gotta go, but I love you guys. We'll connect again, and we'll have a full hour next week.
Okay.
Love you.
Bye-bye. Love ya.
Okay.
Bye bye.